Michael Levine. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Congregation Etz Chaim, a synagogue that's located on 2920 Arlington Boulevard, which is the south side of 50, right between South Garfield and South Fenwick Street. I'm here tonight to speak about a Virginia Department of Transportation plan to improve the corridor along Route 50 between Glebe Road and Fillmore Street. It's looking at safety and operational enhancements. Some of the things the plan includes would be prohibiting left turns and redirecting traffic towards other intersections, putting up curved medians to prevent people from turning, modifying the traffic lights, and a few other items. The reason that VDOT has implemented this plan is because they studied the area and they've determined that there are higher than average accidents occurring on that stretch, and there's also a traffic bottleneck. So the schedule for construction is scheduled to start in 2028. However, public comment is currently ongoing. Preliminary inspections are set to occur this month. Public outreach meetings are occurring in August and September as well. Right-of-way acquisitions will occur in 2026, and like I said, construction will start around 2028. The project costs around $30 million. So the key issue for us, and what brings me here today, is that VDOT has stated that it's evaluating whether or not to remove the public parking that's right in front of our synagogue. That parking stretches between South Garfield and most of the way towards South Fenwick Street. The reason I wanted to come to discuss this issue with the commission tonight is because that parking is used by our disabled and mobility challenged congregants. So we also have a few marked spaces on Fenwick for disabled parking. However, those are only reserved for Saturdays for Shabbat. Furthermore, those spots are a long way from the ramp towards our front door. So for example, just this past weekend for Rosh Hashanah, I was observing those spots on Route 50 are not specifically marked for disabled parking. However, during high holidays and big events, we are permitted to place disabled parking signs, and it was used by at least 5 or 6 vehicles for services. So it's used for disabled parking as well. Furthermore, it's used for funerals and staging vehicles such as hearses. Third, the issue is, as VDOT prepared its study of accident data, and I'll submit this to the commission for review, and I can send it digitally, it plotted all the accidents that occurred during a 5-year period from January 2014 to December 2018, and our synagogue is right here, showing that there are only 1 accident occurred in front of the synagogue during that 5-year period. So the parking there seems, based upon this data, seems to be unrelated to the safety concerns that they're trying to address with the project. Furthermore, as I'm sure members of the commission are aware of, there is a constant threat stream related to Jewish places of worship across the United States. There have been shootings at synagogues, and these are highly publicized events. So in order to mitigate that risk, we do hire off-duty Arlington County Police Department officials as part of their sort of community outreach. And that's where our police stage their vehicles. So, for example, for all of the services this weekend, we had a marked Arlington County Police Department unit with its lights on to deter any would-be aggressors. So those are some of the key reasons why it's important for us to maintain this parking. VDOT has stated that it will be reviewing whether or not to get rid of that parking. So again, that's why I'm here. To date, we have interfaced with State Delegate Patrick Hope. We're hoping to have a meeting with that group of individuals this week. We've interfaced with State Senator Barbara Favola. She has connected us with some of the stakeholders in VDOT, and we have a call set for tomorrow morning. And we're also seeking the support and assistance from your commission tonight. The public comment deadline is September 28th. So I want to be able to submit a public comment based upon our advocacy and lobbying with some of these groups before that deadline. So that's why I'm here. And again, I thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak and to seek your guidance and support if warranted.
Can I ask you a few questions?
Sure.
I'm sorry about that, everyone. Are we talking about the synagogue over by Long Branch Elementary School?
Yeah.
All right. Is it okay if I can is it okay if I can see or have a look at the parking lot you're talking about?
Well, it's not a parking lot. It's on-street parking right on 50. So if you can picture 50 there right in front, right across the stretch of 50 on the south side between Fenwick and Garfield has probably almost the entire block of on-street parking available, which is used by pretty much the synagogue only. There are not many. There are no commercial establishments in the area, and most of the individuals who live in that area are, of course, using off-street parking near their residences.
I may need to get a good one. Sorry, I'm always the type of person that goes in person to check everything out, but.
Sure. Well, I could leave this map for you, and then you can also, feel free to have a visit and walk by anytime you like.
Yeah, and just I can show you the space he's talking about.
Doris, you have a question?
Well, Doris
for us?
asked her question.
Go for it,
This
Doris.
space here.
I see now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. Go ahead, Doris.
Yes, thank you, Doris.
Yeah, I know the synagogue and I passed it on the way to work for 29 years. So, because I live up Route 50, but I just had a couple of questions. So one thing is that it is the street and the potential spaces could expand the street, but the land is public land, right?
To my understanding, I don't think the synagogue, because separating the front entrance of the synagogue, there's a bike path and a small piece of curb with grass, and then, of course, the space is on street. So I'd have to check.
I would think they could touch it if it went, except maybe imminent domain or something.
Yeah, I don't believe, I'd have to get back to the commission on that one.
So, because if you all own the land, it might help. But I was also going to ask, do you know, as part of the renovation, are they going to, because that the pathway and the sidewalk really aren't accessible. So are they planning to add like an accessible sidewalk with curb ramps at either end, and will it lead to, a Route 50 bus stop or anything like that in either direction?
Sure, yeah, I'm not aware of whether a bus stop will be located there. There are curb ramps on Fenwick and Garfield coming, towards that section of Route 50. VDOT has not stated what it would intend to do with those parking spaces. It has solely said that, it's evaluating what to do with them. And given the importance of those spaces, as well as the lack of any real connection to safety that I can see, we see it as a really important.
My reason for asking is that I know that VDOT does have a project up and down 50 all the way to the border with Fairfax that is redoing bus stops and sidewalks that are in the pedestrian way to or never had a pedestrian way because they were on the shoulder, to bus stops, and they're doing that in part with the county and I believe, and then also in part with WMATA. So it's one thing for you to consider, because I'm not sure what the arguments fully are for being able to, keep those spaces where they are. And so my last question in light of that is there an actual parking lot to the city?
There is. We have a parking lot on Garfield Street, South Garfield, so just, I guess one about.
So it's actually a parking lot.
It's a Congregation That's Chaim owned parking lot.
And does it have designated accessible?
Not to my knowledge, no. And I believe having any spot for disabled there wouldn't do much good, given the distance from the synagogue to for anybody who's mobility impaired at a minimum. But yeah, I will check on that. But I don't believe we have any disabled parking in that lot out.
I think
I may be wrong.
I'm just bringing this up because there might be issues that are being raised. When I first saw your testimony, I thought, is this are there issues related to separation of church and state, when you're coming to go to?
Yeah, well, places of worship do have some exemptions from the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Yeah.
So everyone who's like, oh my God, because technically you're supposed to have a parking designation to the closest to the front door. But I don't know the rules, but I do know that places of worship have exemptions, unfortunately. But go ahead.
Go ahead, Bryant.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the 2020 VDOT reports for the stretch of road that you're talking about. Is there any alternative options you would like us that the congregation is focusing on in their advocacy efforts that we should consider in our deliberations?
I'll have to take that one back to the board. At this point, given the security, benefits that piece of roadway provides, and given the heavy use by our mobility impaired congregants, I mean, that would be our priority. I mean, like I said, we already have a few spots on South Fenwick designated for disabled parking, but those are limited to Saturdays only in terms of signage. And again, it is, if you all do get a chance to get out there or are familiar with the layout of the block there, it is a good ways to come up Fenwick, make that left onto Route 50, and then get to the ramp to our front entrance of our synagogue.
Okay.
I'm actually looking at it right now, and actually I have to agree, because that parking lot is a good distance away from your synagogue. You have two good arguments on that, and something that I would have to say is something worth advocating on. The factor that the parking lot is literally far away from your synagogue is one reason. Another reason is for security reasons. And first of all, I'd like to say sorry that you have to go through that. No one should have to go through that or any type of hate, but yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so looking at the report, just considering that it's a fast deadline for the comment closing period, and Courtney and I will email the related documents, but looking at the report under section 6.3.2 supplemental options, option D may present a option to close off Route 50 from that parking space while also providing that additional parking space. So it would essentially create the stretch of road in front of the synagogue as a service road and add a barrier, which could add additional security features while also providing that preserving that parking that the synagogue is hoping to preserve. So if I were to vote forward an
I
option.
have questions before we put a motion up.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, you can continue, but I don't want you to put a motion up.
Well, yeah, I'm not, yeah, but looking at the report, if I were to give my personal recommendation, option T looks like a good starting point for further discussion with VDOT and the appropriate stakeholders.
So I have a few questions. I know you need to leave.
No, I
at
have some
point.
time.
Okay.
Good time.
One, thank you for mentioning who you've met with. Have you met with the individuals who have drafted this plan?
So I have a call with one of the project managers or engineers tomorrow, who was also the individual who was leading the public sort of meeting last month. So I imagine he's pretty familiar with the details of it. So we have a call tomorrow morning.
Okay, and have you met with your synagogue members to discuss the lack of accessible parking at any point? I'm just wondering because it will influence how much weight I want to put into this, to know what you've tried either in the past or recently to discuss with your members. Have you tried alternatives? And along those lines, you have said some things that confused me a little bit, because you said that the spots on 50 would be the closest to the entrance, but it seems like it's not an accessible path as it is. There's no, am I correct?
I think there is one small ramp that leads from 50, at least one small ramp that leads from that parking on 50 up right onto the sidewalk,
Okay,
which is used.
so we went to the doors. So if I were to go to bat on this, I would appreciate some kind of assurance that your members would discuss separate and apart from this project, how they can create some designated spots. And technically, if you wanted to follow the Americans with Disabilities Act, but we'll put that aside because I don't think you need to, it would be an accessible walkway closest to the accessible entrance. So for example, if your accessible entrance is in the basement, then the walkway would go to the basement. And if there was no elevator or whatever, that wouldn't be considered the accessible entrance. And if I had some reassurances that maybe you were looking at, I don't know how large your campus is, but maybe you could have it assessed by somebody to see if there's a reasonable way to maybe pave something over or use a spot that's already paved. Because it seems like it's a larger issue, and they may or may not have a good reason for it, and you've outlined that they might not have a good reason for it. It would show much more good faith to try to address it if you do have a campus yourself. And two, it would also show good faith if you try to get those spots designated as disability parking spaces, because that would really help with your issue. So I don't know if you have some way to assure of that, or if you've already talked to members about that. It would probably require some resources to have somebody come and do an assessment of what you might need to do or something. So I'm not being flippant about it, and that's all. Yes.
I was going to second your thoughts on this, but add also that I would check to see whether this is part of the improvements to Route 50 that VDOT is doing together with Vermont and the county to improve bus stop accessible pathways to bus stops. And the part of the reason that I'm thinking that is, like I said, I ride the bus down there all the time. And it is my recollection that the closest bus stop to the synagogue is right after the synagogue, but before the turn off to Washington Boulevard. And what I recall about that stop, although I haven't paid attention in a long time ago, is that stop is on this little island of cement that a person with a disability cannot use. And if my recollection is that case, then right now there's a lot of money going into Route 50 to correct the most egregiously inaccessible bus stops. And so it might actually, if you can work things out, as Elizabeth said, with the synagogue, and ensuring that there are accessible paths of travel and accessible parking, it would also be helpful, if that's what VDOT, if that's the reason VDOT is doing it, and if the cause maybe is not just car safety, car crash safety, but pedestrian safety, then I would think it would be a benefit to the synagogue to have one bus stops in either direction accessible so that people with disabilities who don't drive can use transit again. So.
Which that makes me think of something.
And have VDOT pay for it.
Yeah, but Brian, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not looking at what you're looking at, but I think you said there were various options.
Yes.
And so if there are various options, one of the options, you could present an alternative option of, work on this area, or if you're going to work on this area, put in an accessible route so that you could get some help paying for it, and so that you put the pressure on the county to consider another option. But you would have to write it pretty quick.
Right.
Or you could just say, before finalizing it in this area, please consider creating another option to be determined.
Sure.
Yeah.
Actually, I would like to come out and actually check it out some more to get some, do an observation on my own, actually, if you don't mind me doing that.
Yeah, you could, if you need assistance from the congregation, some type of point of contact, we can get that to you, but of course, it's a publicly accessible sidewalk, and you can go have a look at your convenience.
Because I've ran into stuff like this with, not to get religious, but I've ran into stuff like this with my own parish, and accessibility aside, it can be a bit difficult for religious place of, it can be a little bit difficult for, religious places of faith to get support on accessibility. So I kind of would like to come out and.
Sure. Well, we can definitely arrange that.
Yeah, let's do that. Courtney, can we?
Courtney has my contact info.
Let's get that set up because I'm actually very much interested in this now.
Great.
Okay, well, we have a few more days till the 28th, but I feel like perhaps after you finish public comment, we could, on our owners commission, try to come up with a motion today, because I know that you're under a time constraint. So we will try to do that.
One other important fact.
Yes.
The other important fact that I want to let you know, since you're going to be meeting with Senator Favola, she is the chair of the State Legislative Disability Commission. So she is vested in disability issues and at the state level, which of course is not a state agency. And she is the chair. And also Delegate Hope is a member. 2 members from Northern Virginia. So
Yeah, that's good. And when you meet with Hope, assume he has some knowledge of disability rights issues.
Okay.
And also, I know this is a bit of a stupid question, sorry for it. But, is this considered to be a part of Delegate Lopez district?
Maybe Adele's in that border area. We would have to check the maps for that.
I know for us in Penrose, which is not far from there, and that's still in Delegate Lopez territory. But I may be completely wrong. To be honest, I've not been up to date on the new mapping, but if it is in Delegate Lopez district, then it may also be worth checking in with him.
It is in his district. Just check the map.
Yeah. So Delegate Alfonso Lopez would be someone to look into for support. But also still meet up with Delegate Lopez because our Delegate Hope, sorry, because he is well in depth in that area of expertise.
Sure.
He's a sharper disability rights advocate than I am. That's it.
Thank you.
All right. Depending on what we put forth, I have a feeling that we might want to come back to you, whether even after we might support it or not. So would you be open to that?
Sure. And just to get a little bit of an understanding, can you again tell me what the next steps of the commission would be? And are you trying to, would you need to craft some type of a motion?
Yes, we'd have to discuss it, craft a motion. You could see there are some issues, you know.
Of course.
So,
Completely understand.
so we would have to discuss it, but because you're under a time constraint and because I checked on this with Courtney earlier, I know we do have time to discuss it after the public comment period. So I will at least make a promise to keep you informed.
Thank you.
Also, since you haven't actually talked yet with the people who are in charge of this in the county level, it would be great if you could get back to me or Courtney with that information, because even if we vote on something now, it would still be good to have that information. That's
Sure.
right.
Yeah.
To clarify, this project's being controlled by the state. There's,
Oh,
so this is VDOT
Oh.
owned. Route 50 is owned completely by Virginia Department of Transportation,
Even
so.
goodness.
They're sort of just giving the county hey, we're gonna be, adjusting your roads.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
So if the county could back,
Mhm.
then that would say something.
Yeah, I know there's a county board meeting next week. It might be way too late, but we can of course, send something to Matt. If we decide to craft a letter and get that sent, we can of course, CC Matt and Chair Dorsey on it, see if they can do any last minute advocacy work from the county side.
Yeah,
And as I understood your ask, it was that you would be sending something and then you would add us as in support of this, your statement? Or you, what is your specific ask? Is it?
Sure, so what we're looking for is essentially what you said, just as we're crafting our final submission before the September 28th deadline, to be able to state that we met with your commission, and that, you know, based upon a motion that was passed, it's supportive of our position, in addition to the other advocacy we've done, so sort of adding the weight of this commission's kind of perspective onto what we say.
yeah.
So that would be what we would, and I mean, anything additional, for example, any liaison or interface that your team can do with the, with any county members who might have some sway with VDOT would also be appreciated.
We have a few ways, but
Yes,
So Karen O'Donnell, I am new to this group, so I have a clarifying question. In terms of supporting your position, what specifically are you asking for? To retain the existing parking spots that are designated or not designated? So what are you
So what I would
specifically
like,
asking for?
what our temple hopes to do is that any consideration of removing these parking spaces is not included in their final plan for the VDOT safety improvement project.
yeah.
So we just many residents in the area are very supportive of this VDOT safety improvement. I myself find that the stretch of road to be a little bit of a challenge to navigate. So, State Senator Favola and Delegate Hope were both at that public meeting, both are supportive of it, so we're supportive of it as well. But we just want the plan to not include taking away those spaces
Yes.
in front of our synagogue, because.
and I reiterate that I think it would be great for you to say that your congregation is going to take some proactive steps.
Sure, and that was another thing I wanted to add, that, you know, given the guidance and suggestions of the commission here, I will take it back to the board and our synagogue to have a good look at, you know, how we're addressing these mobility challenges and, I mean, accessibility issues related to the synagogue. So I will certainly take that back to the congregation.
Right, or if it's maintained, that you would try to actually have it officially designated as a disability spot and, you know, perhaps put resources towards helping that become
Sure.
accessible. And I-
Sure, I will take that back for consideration. I'm not in a position to,
Right, I
you know, make
understand.
that decision unilaterally.
Right.
But definitely point taken, and we'll discuss it and connect back with the commission on that.
Okay, Doris.
You know, I just thought of one other thing that you might want to look at. Because I think the nearest stop is the stop I was talking about, that actually, as I think about it, is just beyond Fillmore. And so what that would mean to me is if they're going to come down there and do some work right there, I'm wondering also that you might do the disability community a favor about trying to get them to ensure that that big intersection there at Fillmore and 50 is fully accessible, both accessible, reachable, curb cuts and traffic lights controls, but also that it's an audible traffic light, because it's a very complex situation, as I'm sure you know, with the various turning lefts and rights and all the lanes.
Mhm.
Personally vouch on that, and driving on it.
And there are a couple of buses that come through there in that case too, that go down to the Career Center and Columbia Pike.
Oh, that raises a question. Have you, since you said that the police sometimes use it as a staging area in high holidays, have you talked to the, maybe to those folks to ask about why they use those spots and how they would suggest helping the congregation maintain safety. Well, I mean, it'd just be interesting to see their perspective.
Okay. How to believe
No,
it?
these are just
Yeah,
pure
no, that's.
recommendations out of the blue here.
Sure, sure.
Alexa, did you have anything you wanted to say before comments closes?
No, I'd have to look at it, and can you guys send a copy of this proposal so I can look at the different options as well? I know one of you was talking about looking at it, but I don't know if the rest of us have it.
Yeah, I sent it to Courtney, and she'll.
Okay, then I probably have it somewhere.
Okay.
And also to clarify, the police use that front stretch because that is the front of the synagogue. So it's more, it's for protection, but it's also, when they use that, it is also during high holidays or whenever they're there, also to signify a presence also, correct? Like they're not just using the spaces.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, we request that they park there for visual deterrence.
Yeah.
And option D might be able to, because they'll provide that additional like patch of grass where, because I know sometimes cruisers will position themselves on grass for a special event. So I think option D could be an excellent starting point between the synagogue and VDOT on a happy compromise for, you know, I drive Route 50 regularly in that stretch of road, so I do see their concerns, but also want to make sure that, you know, the neighborhood character does not provide a lot of parking options. So want to make sure we're having max parking options, particularly, well, for this commission, particularly those with disabilities.
Sure. Sure. Good point on option B, thank you.
Can I ask, I hope this isn't a strange question, is there a preschool there, am I mistaken?
There is a preschool.
That's what I thought, because I work near there. So I'm curious about the requirement for those spots for the preschool, and I'm curious about the security aspect for the preschool.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if this is part of the Vision Zero plan,
Yeah.
which is a plan where they're trying to say no pedestrian fatalities by a certain period of time.
Okay.
And I wonder, although this is a state thing, so, and Vision Zero is a county thing, is that correct? So forget everything I just.
I just think we had a good round.
There's multiple factors to consider.
Yeah.
Realistically, going at it with multiple approaches is your best bet. Security reason, accessibility, and the factor that you have a preschool running out of your congregation is also another factor of concern because children does use that to get into your congregation or into your synagogue. I'm sorry.
Excellent point. Well, thank you, Mr. Levine.
Levine, yep.
Thank you for presenting your comment and.
Yeah, thank you. I think I should have said let's try the toolbox.
Thank you. It was great to have the opportunity to present, and I'll stick around for a few minutes because I'm just curious to see how the rest of the meeting goes, but I do have another engagement, so I may have to duck out in a few minutes. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
I'll be in contact with you
Yes.
in less than 24 hours and I'll send it.
Great.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
You want to go ahead and start we have DES who's ready to present.
Oh, yes, absolutely I do. Thank you for your patience. We can do the minutes any old time, so go right ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you very much for having us this evening. My name is Clinton Edwards, and I serve as the Arlington Transit Services Manager, and also on the meeting tonight is our Bureau Chief, Miss Lynn Rivers. So we're coming to you all today, to the commission today, just to talk about phase one of our public engagement for STAR. The STAR service is, of course, the specialized transportation for Arlington residents. And so as part one of the feedback, I'm going to talk a little bit about the current public engagement that we have started, where we are doing a online feedback form to get feedback from users of the STAR users, interested persons, and transit enthusiasts on STAR, what their experience is, and just overall what their satisfaction level is with the STAR program. So I'll go ahead and get started. Courtney, are you going to display the slide, or would you like me to display the slide?
I can do it. Let me, give me a second here.
Okay.
I like the term transit enthusiasts.
Yes.
That's a bit fancy.
Commissioner Alexa and Commissioner Doris, please bear with me. I know this will be your third time hearing this, since you heard it twice last Tuesday, and then this will be the third time that you've heard this. So please just bear with me. I know it'll be new to everyone else.
Understandable.
All right, STAR public engagement. This is my single and only slide. At the very bottom will be the crux of what we are here before you all tonight for. So as I mentioned earlier, the public engagement form is open from now until September 30th. And what our goal is that we're looking for clear and accessible communication. We want to hear from those passengers and users and the aforementioned transit enthusiasts. So what we've done, and just going through these few bullet points here, is that the 1,478 STAR users, if you see there on the screen, there's a postcard to the right of the graphic. Then it reads, "We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts by September 30th." So that postcard was mailed to every STAR user who actually is registered with us. So 1,478 of those were mailed the last week of August, so that we can get the feedback. It's front and back. Also on the Arlington Transit website, when you first scroll down, and I can actually show it on my screen a little bit later, on the very front of the homepage, it says STAR feedback opportunity. So if users were to click that, there is an opportunity right there on the homepage to be able to also give the feedback. For those that are STAR registered users, this week you should have also been receiving the postcard, just as a gentle reminder. If you have not taken the feedback, to go ahead and do so. So anyone that has taken STAR trips this week or in the next coming weeks, their driver should be offering them a postcard just as a reminder about this public engagement opportunity phase one. For those that aren't comfortable doing on the website, their call center for those registered STAR users that call and make their reservations. If you just want to do the survey through a person, through a human, the call center is equipped. When folks call in to make their reservations or any questions they have, they are equipped to be able to receive that feedback and to record the feedback of anyone that wants to give it during their interaction with a human at the STAR call center. And also during next week, email reminders will go out to all registered STAR users that we have an active email address for. This is just another means in which we really want to get the feedback of the community. Additionally, we have presented this at the Transportation Commission last Tuesday. The Transportation Commission will be on the 28th. The Transit Advisory Committee heard this last Tuesday evening. The Accessibility Subcommission, where Commissioner Alexa is the chair, they received this information last Tuesday well. And then tonight with you all, the Disability Advisory Commission, it says committee there on the slide, commission, you all are getting the opportunity tonight. We received a lot of great feedback. Commissioner Ray gave us a lot of good resources that we turned over to our community and public engagement team. We received that feedback last Tuesday and turned that over to them on Friday. So the reason that we're here tonight is that we want to do more listening than talking, and looking for other opportunities in which to engage those that want to give feedback on STAR, and also what areas are we missing, or what other commissions or committees do we need to talk to? Are there pockets within Arlington that we need to reach out to? This is just phase one, this public engagement. What we're looking is, as we move into phases and going into the fall, into the winter, what other opportunities are there for us to capture people and to get their feedback on STAR? So I bring that before the commission, and I, myself and Lynn, are looking for you all's feedback. So at this point, I'll stop talking and go into listen mode.
Does anybody have any questions?
Well, honestly, can I be honest? I've never fully understood STAR, actually. I've only heard about it a little in the past, and all I know is it's exactly like, no offense to you guys, but it's exactly like Metro Access. And if you guys get where I'm going, it's kind of like that, except for Arlington County. Other than that, like, there's not much around getting the message out that STAR is a service for individuals with disabilities.
I think that's a very good point. I have no idea how STAR works either, although I'll probably have to start using it very soon. Any other questions?
I have a kind of a detailed question. There's an item in that survey, I think, to rank order choices, to use a drag and drop. And there's challenges just making it accessible, like for somebody to be able, so it looks like the rest of the survey is pretty accessible, but I think that's just in terms of a best practice, that can be challenging for some users to fill out.
Yeah, and what you need to do is, I'm sure there's somebody on Arlington County staff that
Test it.
knows about accessibility.
Yeah, it
I
looks
mean,
like
you're-
it's that one item.
You're talking about issues like people who use screen readers.
Yeah.
That's
That's very hard, because they have to hold that in their memory, in terms of how many items. And how to order
Exactly,
them. Yeah.
exactly. So, I have a point, 2 points. You haven't mentioned how you're going to use this information and whether you have a plan to, or resources to actually have a goal of implementing the feedback. Maybe that's stage 3, but I'm just interested because most people aren't gonna respond if they don't think it's gonna lead to anything.
Mm-hmm. If I can address the first question, I think that that question was, what are your top 3 priorities for STAR? The one where you have to drag the items.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. I am notating that to take that back to our CAPES team to see how we can.
Yeah, there's other alternatives to setting it up
Okay.
that way in the tool you use to build that survey.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just notating that. And then on the second question, we are entering this with no preconceived notions. We are absolutely just looking to try to figure out what are their thoughts on STAR, how it works well for them, how it doesn't work well. And if we get some good feedback or get feedback that may not be that good, it could lead to doing some level of operational efficiency. So we don't have an end game in mind on how we look to use this feedback, but we want to use it to, of course, make STAR the best that it can be.
Thank you. Ryan?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, since we're on the feedback opportunity, tool. Is this the only tool that STAR and Department of Transportation Services plans on using, for the information gathering part, or is there, is staff considering doing user interviews? Because in my professional experience within customer service, adding those customer service interviews where you're having that direct face-to-face interaction allows you to dig more deeply than what can be provided on the survey. Is staff considering having a roundtable discussion with STAR users?
That has been a level of consideration to have some sort of a, for lack of better terms, fireside chat that we can gather some STAR users and have that. That has been something we have thrown out there. Where we are right now is that this was our first crack at it with the survey. And so we're coming to all the commissions and committees to ask what other opportunities may there be, like the drag and drop question. That was great feedback. I'm sure there's a mechanism that we can tweak that question so that you don't have to go through the drag and drop. And then also the gentleman to your left, I can't see him, just talking about he has no idea how STAR works. So maybe there's an option that as we're continuing this feedback, we need to give an overview of STAR just to make people aware. So there may also be a public awareness piece of what STAR actually is. So that's why we're coming here and collecting feedback and listening, because there may be opportunities that we have missed or we haven't thought of as we've been pulling together and brainstorming how this feedback will work in the fall and into the winter.
Do you plan on reaching out to Independence Center of Northern Virginia?
Well, you guess what? Commissioner Ray that's sitting right across the table, that was feedback that she provided us.
I was like, hopefully you are. One of the commissioners said.
Yes, she provided that feedback to us last Tuesday. So we had that on the list, and that was turned over to our CAPES, our community, make sure our community and public engagement team through the Department of Environmental Services.
Okay, I have a question, or actually a suggestion.
Absolutely.
I think that I've heard the numerous places that you are presenting to, and it's obvious you're trying to be really proactive and thorough. And so one recommendation I would add is that it seems you're mostly reaching out to existing STAR riders. And oftentimes there might be somebody like me who may not use STAR for one reason or another. And so I wouldn't even be reached to know to complete the survey. But I mean, oftentimes there's a whole pool of people with disabilities who might have reasons why they don't use STAR, but you're not gonna reach them with your current plan. So, I mean, and just for examples, I know that to get a Metro disability card, you have to register or you used to, you have to still do. So maybe you could, get access to that list. I don't know how that works with your relationships. But that would be a really great way of covering the waterfront, probably a little too expensive, but I mean that, and because I also think that some people, including myself, although no longer, but when I was younger, I thought that you couldn't use a separate system like STAR unless you were unable to use the Metro system. And it was only later that I learned that STAR is actually an effort by Arlington County to cover more transportation options, that it was really a very proactive program to supplement. And that's going to my point of, I don't think you're gonna reach a lot of people who you need to survey with your current plan.
Mm-hmm. So just one thing, all STAR users are Metro Access certified. So they all are certified, but that's one thing we've been charged through our transit strategic plan as well by Chair Dorsey, just to find those persons that may not be utilizing fixed route, and to your point as well, finding those persons that might not be star users. And so that's why we're going to these additional means and not just talking with the accessibility subcommittee. We're going to commissions, the Independent Center, just trying to persons that might not even know what star is, and they just see it. For those persons that utilize star, we have 2 taxi cab providers. And so for those that do not need a mobility device vehicle, you would just see the taxi cab possibly just going down the street, and you didn't know that it was a specialized transportation trip. So, so if you have any suggestions on places or how we can reach those persons that are not, we are open ears and looking to receive that feedback.
Well, you're already all over my current suggestions, so good job. You already did it.
One of my suggestions would Commissioner Nicolette, would be looking at, physical therapy offices or different areas in Arlington and the surrounding areas like Falls Church. For a year last year, I needed STAR services and I had no idea that it existed. And once I did, the process was really arduous for me. And with like what I was going through at the time, I just couldn't figure it out. And I just didn't have the bandwidth mentally and physically to deal with it. So that's something else I wanted to flag as somebody who's not currently in the system and no longer needs it, but at the time was not. And I found it to be arduous, but someone had told me about it. But a lot of times, whether somebody is has new mobility issues, a lot of times they're going to be in physical therapy offices, I have found, and other sorts of areas in Arlington County, but also the surrounding counties, where I had to schedule my appointments either at like 6 in the morning or around 6 at night so that I could have somebody take me, not during the day when they were home. So I would look at areas like that, like doctor's offices, et cetera, to kind of get the word out, I think would be my personal.
Yeah, I think that's so great. You wouldn't believe how physical therapists are an incredible resource. They really can get the message out to folks.
And have you considered the factor that Arlington is the second largest concentration of disabled veterans in all of the Commonwealth of Virginia?
Wow.
Reaching out to hospitals like the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland, and reaching out to Fort Belvoir would be also good resources because they can connect, or they can get disabled veterans that live in Arlington connected with STAR. I know Bethesda, it's a little bit of a hike, but still a lot of disabled veterans from Arlington go to Walter Reed. And that would be a good resource. And also potentially doing there's some type doing a community outreach fair or some type of event to get the message out about STAR would also be helpful.
Yeah, and then I would also recommend assisted living facilities within the county. And also the Arlington Commission on Aging. Yeah. I know they have a very active commission as well. So reach out to them. One thing that I would like staff to review is the application process and consider, because I from what I'm reading on your website, they have to be approved by Metro Access to access STAR services, correct?
Yes, Metro Access handles the handles the approval and the application process for STAR.
Okay, yeah, so I reviewed the application, it's 8 pages. I I would like to see, I'm hoping staff is applying the Arlington equity framework that was passed recently for, accessing the STAR service. The inequities, one being, you have to access you have to have a primary care doctor or access a medical professional to complete part of the form, which, could produce a financial burden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Even
That's why I
if,
just didn't do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, it's,
Dora, Brian, are you completed?
yeah, and just, I'll go over to Doris, and because the last question is the one we've all been thinking about the past couple of months.
Okay. Doris, go for it.
Yeah, I do, but I think I do want to explain one other thing, and that is, because I am your liaison to MANA AAC. And what I was going to mention was that STAR technically is the alternative to Metro access, and it was created to be that, and consequently, that's why the assessments are done by WMATA, so that people are determined qualified for ADA paratransit, not just a local county's human service paratransit, but ADA paratransit. And that's why, as staff has mentioned, that criteria, which would be the same for Metro Access and for STAR, is utilized, and you get a statement from your own doctor. But doing the in-person assessment is often important, because what they're trying to determine to be eligible for ADA paratransit is that you are unable to use fixed route service, whether it's ART or Metro bus, all the time, or at least part of the time, because of a number of factors that are in the regulations for ADA paratransit. So, and it was done that way because part of the advantage to Arlington County is that the fare structure, at least until recently, the fare structure on Metro Access would cost an Arlington citizen using Metro Access more money, and would cost the county more money, because we were paying into the Metro Access subsidy and for the citizens of Arlington, just like the citizens of Fairfax and Alexandria, Montgomery County, PG County, and the district. But when patrons in Arlington turned to use STAR as the alternative, at least originally and for a long time, the per trip cost to the county was cheaper. In fact, in the beginning, half the price. So it was a benefit to the county, and it was a benefit to the patron because of the way STAR was structured. And a lot of patrons of STAR want to try to keep it that way because it was great. I mean, in Fairfax County, your only alternative is Metro Access or Fast Trans. And Fast Trans is a very limited service. And in Alexandria, you do have an alternative, Alexandria DOT. But then they have their own system for for patrons to become eligible for GOT. And if you want to also use Metro Access, which you're encouraged to do, then you have to go get 2 assessments, rather in Arlington, you only have to have 1. So those are some thoughts, but my questions are, and I'll try to put them out there fast, but it is a couple of questions. One is, the questions used on the survey, I have not personally seen because I'm not a patron, and I didn't see them necessarily in the materials for last week's meeting. But could you tell us how those questions that you asked STAR patrons, how they align with the performance standards for ADA paratransit, which I think is important because a lot of the complaints are, especially recent ones with, extended waits for vehicle pickups and such, are aligned with the ADA performance standards. And then secondly, I was wondering, because we did point out last week in the meeting that the notice for the survey had a very limited time, and it wasn't sent to organizations that represent or are self-advocacy groups of persons with disabilities, that maybe you should have had a more extended comment period. So I guess my question is, would you all, even at this point, consider extending the survey comment period and putting an announcement out to disabilities, particularly disability-run organizations, so they can distribute to their patrons? Because I don't see why it's just 30 days. It could have been 45 or 60 days for true public notices and with, to provide some equity for the community so that we can get it to other people.
So, Commissioner Ray, to answer your first question, the questions will help us point us to the next round of engagement to get more specifics. And basically, we wanted to just get people's thoughts on the STAR's current service and learn what matters most to folks that fill out the survey. Second question.
Well, so it doesn't ask, do you experience long wait times? How long might you spend on the phone or waiting for somebody to answer the phone, or how, have you, what is your, do you think STAR is in the main, I'm trying to form a question. The question really is, what's your average time riding on a STAR vehicle from your origin to your destination point, stuff like that? Those are the performance standards. Those are in line with the performance standards.
It does actually get to that. The questions are nuanced to guide us to more specific performance measures. So what the questions will give us is that it'll allow us to get to more specifics, ride time, pickup time, etc. Many of the questions ask basically the value of STAR and what you pay. You can pick either very satisfied or very unsatisfied. It talks about STAR vehicles, clean and well maintained, communication about your trip, scheduling process, travel time relative to trip distance. So we do have the opportunity for folks to provide that. And then anywhere there's not a specific question, there's an option for folks filling out the survey to share any additional comments or feedback about your current experiences with STAR. And then your second question, yes, we absolutely have considered extending the survey, and it is very likely that the survey will be extended. We haven't finalized that, but there is a very high likelihood that the survey will be extended until October.
Any other questions?
One question I had that wasn't related to outreach, but I'm sure has been asked, in the first quarter of the year, we were made aware of a staff white paper that would have significantly reduced our services. What is the current status of that white paper? Is it, has it been thrown out the window and we're starting from scratch? Where are we on that from a staff perspective?
We dropped them in the Potomac and they are gone.
I love it. That's a great response.
We are. This effort is starting from scratch. We heard that loud and clear that folks wanted to start from scratch. So this effort starts from scratch with no preconceived notions, with no final output in mind.
Well, thank you for that.
Alexa, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to comment on that too. The impression that I have both from what you've said at this meeting and, from what I heard at the other meeting is, very much that the idea really is, to start anew. And I think that on the one hand, I definitely think that it makes sense to me that there are certain things, maybe on the ridership's mind, like, oh, are they still, is someone still breathing down their neck about the budget? Because that was probably where some of what we didn't like came from. So I can see why those things are still in people's minds, but I do, as I said at that meeting, I do have the impression that you really, staff really did hear that we really were unsatisfied and deeply concerned, and I really do appreciate that. And that was one of the things that I wanted to say to this commission too, was, I am definitely going to be looking for, when this eventually does turn into proposals, what it looks like in terms of the financial stuff, since that was a concern. But I do think that we should not approach this, just assuming, oh, they're being really nice and they're just going to justify budget cuts. I think we should, I think we should approach this in good faith, I guess is the best way that I can say it. But I am very glad and very impressed that people seem to have really taken seriously that the community was very alarmed, honestly, about the way that things were. So I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, Commissioner Alexa, we appreciate you saying that last Tuesday. I know there was a lot of feedback coming from all sorts of places, but you just kind of guiding everyone like, all right, let's, this is what we asked for, so let's give staff the opportunity to produce what we asked.
As I mentioned at that meeting, I tend to be the kind of person that wants to come to a negotiation. If I come to a negotiation and somebody, does something that I don't think is in good faith, then I'll bring the hammer down. But I think it's important to, start off at the negotiating table. And so I am glad for this move. I'll put it that way. I'm not totally sure everything's going to go, but I'm glad that staff took us so seriously on this one, because it was definitely something that deeply concerned me. And that my eyes are definitely going to be open for some of the things that, I'm concerned about. But I am glad that you guys are willing to rethink, and I appreciate that.
You have a question?
Oh, no.
Okay, Brian, I saw your hand up.
I just had one thought, it might be an ask that we have to make to the county board on, but establishing like a STAR service review task force, obviously including the already appointed commission members, but including STAR users. I know there is a STAR consumer advocate group that has been formed over the past year. And I think maybe rolling this into a task force review would be beneficial from a constituent engagement standpoint. I guess my question of whether that is something we have to ask Courtney, is that something we would need to ask the board to consider establishing?
A subcommittee,
Well, a task force.
task force, I
Yeah.
believe, I can check the handbook, but I believe that's something that you guys could, because they would report under you, but I could just double confirm.
Okay. But I think, maybe talking with the Transit Commission and establishing the task force, one, to make sure that there's a dedicated meeting time to go in depth into our current STAR system, and the needs, in our post-COVID, world. While also having that consumer voice and that consumer viewpoint, in those meetings, consistently. But that's all I'll say on STAR for tonight.
Doris, you had your hand was up?
Yeah, I, since you're collecting feedback, I feel the real need to mention, I don't think we can get away from what led us to where we are now, which was that a proposal was put out last year, but Alexa didn't it even go back 2 years?
I'd have to look to see how old it was, but yeah, I definitely had the impression
Yeah, no,
that
I think it did.
that was something that was in the works for a while.
Yeah.
So
Well, from the spring, right? And and it's good because you are a neutral person coming in new, right? And actually, so is your boss. So I don't think we're going to be able to ignore some of the concerns that were raised when that proposal was put out. And I want to speak about one. And that is that there was a proposal in that packet that sought to penalize customers of STAR for no-shows and late cancellations. That appeared to be based on it very roughly on what Metro Access has in place. But in the WMATA version, people had appeal rights from any suspensions of service and such. So this STAR proposal was proposing penalization by a stepped suspension of services. And that is really the services of an ADA paratransit service is vital to anybody who can't ride at least fixed route if they don't drive. And it's not a fair process if there isn't an appeal process. And I don't know why, when that proposal was put out, they didn't look to what WMATA is doing, because it's a very fair stepped process. So that's one. I hope that you will not raise this without fully, I do mean fully, vetting that with the Arlington residents, with the disabilities who are STAR ADA paratransit users. And then I also want to mention a good thing that I think would be welcome by the disability community is some form of incentives and penalty system for the contracts for STAR providers like Red Top or Old Dominion Taxi or Uber or whoever, because people are experiencing excessive waits for vehicles and some other problems that totally affect their life in negative ways. So those are the two things that I would, if you're going to come up with some kind of package, consider. And I think you should also fully vet any policies that might change, for example, vehicle wait time or anything like that, that affect when the vehicle arrives, when it leaves and leaves you stranded or doesn't leave you stranded. And you know, like things like time making reservations and such like that. Because, and what I really mean is you may consider some of these, but I think you really need to have public hearings and focus groups, and not, I don't just mean, you know, within county clients, because the people who are using STAR are members of the public, citizens with disabilities in Arlington, and it is extremely important that you vet with them, any proposals about operations that could have negative effects.
And Commissioner, if I could just take a moment to address a couple of those items. That white paper that you previously mentioned was introduced during March, and there, with the STAR and the STAR user guides, there is still a appeals process that existed even with those proposals, and those prior proposals focused on the change in the process, and there was no plan to change the appeal process in there. But appeal process does absolutely exist. And just with specialized transportation and also with fixed route public transportation, anytime services are to be look to be taken from a person, there is an opportunity for that person to appeal it on both specialized and fixed route transportation, big bus.
But there was nothing in the policy that would go in the rider's guide that would tell people specifically what their rights are. So that was what, so none of us saw anything that in those proposals that would have spelled that out. And I think it's necessary to have that because it won't be accepted by the riding public.
Absolutely. And there's a STAR rider guide on the STAR website. So just that anyone
but that
that is
policy was never in there.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is it was a completely new policy.
okay. I see what you're saying.
There were never penalties before that proposal.
So you're saying that the penalty was too egregious, or the step up of the penalty was more aggressive than the WMATA, the Metro Access?
Over time,
Okay.
really over time.
I add that adding a penalty service, and it's Commissioner Boatner speaking, but
Adding the what service?
having any type of penalty system in place for someone that misses their ride or is late to a ride, I am kind of a little concerned about that. I kind of like to have a little bit more information on that because we have to consider the community that we're working with in all aspects, physically, developmentally, mental, So can you mind tuning on what the penalties are like actually? I'm sorry.
Penalties, you're asking Justin if, are there current penalties, or was that just a proposal which is now in the Potomac River?
They're in the Star User Guide, and I'm trying to pull up the Arlington Transit website, which is not just spiraling right now. But for continued, because the county incurs a cost if a vehicle is sent out to a Star client's home, and that client either cancels or no shows, there is a cost that is incurred. So there is some level of a penalty where those services could be suspended for X period of time. I'd have to pull up the guide. I want to say, as Commissioner Ray was saying, it's a step-up penalty, but continue to not show up and cancel, there is penalties for that. And that's standard across the public transportation industry, for fixed route and, I'm sorry, not fixed route, specialized transportation.
But there's no appeal process or panel made up of Star users and staff, similar to the process that would, halt the process. Most human service providers do that anyway, but and like DMAS does that for HCBS, but at any rate, if you look at the WMATA process, there is an appeals process, and that much I know. There was no appeals process in that proposal that was put forth, none at all. And let alone, I mean, step up is one thing, that's a whole separate issue, but meaning that, if you do something and you've done, I think it's 3 times within a month,
Yeah, 30.
for Metro Access, you could be suspended for a week. It's either 1 month or 2 months. And then, but if you continue to do it and it escalates, and within a certain period, I think it's a year, then it could go as far as a month or more of suspension. But there's always an appeals process. And I saw no appeals process in what I read from Star.
Yeah.
Yes, I actually was able to pull it up. The suspension policy is that you are allowed 3 no-shows within a 30-day period. If you exceed the allowed number, your standing order trips and privileges to request a trip will be suspended for 7 days.
That's a week, yeah. So
Yes, Star does have a progressive suspension policy throughout
That
a
one.
calendar year. And then it goes on to read that appeals of suspensions should be made to the Star call center. If the results of the appeal are unsatisfactory, a second appeal should be made to the transit services manager, which would be myself.
Brian?
Yeah,
I
sorry.
think this might have to be the last couple of questions, because we have a lot more on our agenda and only half an hour.
Yeah, I'm definitely open to having more discussions and getting into the nitty gritty, especially for the penalty system, particularly the appeals process. And I will save those questions for another for the sake of time. One thing I did want to mention, a article that I think was, I'll have to go and pull it. It was either Arlington Now or one of the local disability rights blog about a rider being stranded at night and had to call the Emergency Operations Center to get assistance on getting home. I'm hope staff, I'm not sure if they didn't give you a name or anything, so I would have to reach out to see, the date this occurred, but it was a reported incident, and I'm hoping we can provide a better rider recovery policy, especially for those late night rides. But yeah, other than that, bring it back.
Okay, great. I would welcome an additional conversation from you. And it sounds like you're open to that too, so is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your and taking the time to get our feedback and listening through the whole beginning part of the meeting, so. Great.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for all the feedback, and I have all that notated. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks. So, Courtney, is this do you have suggestions of what next to cover, or should I just do the minutes again?
So the minutes are next.
Okay, does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Actually, I attended, so do I get listed as the attendee last month? I'm not a commissioner formally.
So I think, yeah, so the top part is the commission's attendance. So I did mention you on the first
I got it.
portion, and I will figure out this. But you will be on there. Thank you.
And Doris, I know you had raised an issue. Courtney, did you already address that one?
Yes, so I looked at the statement that Doris was referring to. So yes, she was correct. It said active and it was supposed to state inactive for the group. So I did update that.
Doris, what she said was that she heard your feedback about the minutes and you were correct and she made the change.
Great.
I motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Great. So is there anything else on our agenda, or can we move to the addressing the first public comment speaker?
Okay, so we have confirming the rescheduling date for board member Matt to come back. I believe his person was saying that he's available on Thursdays. And then the other item is looking for a representative for the Vision Zero external stakeholder group.
Okay, and I'd like to add, but I'm not, well, whether we're going to accept the universal aging design checklist?
Yeah, you can, it's up to you now, yeah.
Okay.
If you want to do that, that's perfectly fine.
Okay. So I'll start with that because I just mentioned it. At the last meeting, there was a discussion and a guest speaker talking about something that I think it was the adult, I'm looking at Brian because you're much better with these details. It was a commission that was trying to create a checklist which would not supplant any legal or code requirements, but would be used to help county people understand livability issues.
Yes, it was, so the Aging Commission came to us with a checklist that did not replace current state, federal, local laws and regulations when it comes to accessibility, like the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disability Act. This would just be supplemental items that aren't in those respective regulations as identified by this task force. And essentially, it would just be a check sheet. And I've checked in on the city of Boston's checklist as well. And our items do match theirs as well. And it would just be a guide for our fellow commissioners on the Planning Commission as they go through their site plan reviews and specifically their housing projects to negotiate additions that aren't required in federal, state and local regulations.
Excellent. So I think they're also, another term they're using was livability.
Yep.
It's about livability versus just legal requirements. I think it might fit with what we're now calling disability justice as opposed to disability rights. Disability justice would look at how do we really want our lives to be considered. So, and as I understand it, we had ability to look at the checklist, but it wasn't the most up-to-date checklist. But for this meeting, we now have the most up-to-date checklist. And the representative that spoke with us from the Housing Commission or Housing, I don't want to say it was the Housing Commission because I don't want to misspeak, has contacted me and asked if we would endorse the checklist. And I know, Doris, you had some issues with it, worried about how it might be used to supplant legal requirements. I know some other people had issues, and they were going to bring it back to us. And did anybody reach out about this checklist since our last meeting? Do you know? No?
Not that I'm aware of. I did get the most updated one provided, and I can go over. So I'll just do the checklist part and skip the introduction and explanation for the checklist. But for common areas, looking to include weather sheltered / covered entryways, outside benches near entrance to common areas, indoor seating near entrances to common areas, automatic door openers at entrances, ceiling tiles to improve acoustics. And then going into individual units. Now this again is for multi-unit residential buildings and not single family housing. Individual units have 2 multiple height door peepholes, rocker style or motion sensor lighting controls. Apologies. Kitchen lighting under the cabinets above stove and over sink. Pull-out shelves in lower corner cabinets in kitchens, bathrooms, height adjustable shower heads with at least a hose that's at least 60 inches long. Bathrooms, open or pivot style toilet paper holders. In the bedroom, foot level automatic sensored night lights, miscellaneous height adjustable rod and shelf closet organizations, miscellaneous smart programmable thermostat with voice activation capability. And then next one is universal design features not regulated for type B adaptable units, open for consideration by the site plan review committee. Individual units, lever style door hardware throughout the unit, kitchen level style kitchen faucets, bathroom level style sink, lever style sink, tub and shower faucets, bathroom, 15 to 19 inches height toilet, and for shower with 4-inch threshold in lieu of a standard tub in the second bathroom.
Thank you. So, is that?
Yeah, that's it.
15, toilet 15 to 19.
15 to 19 inches.
Height.
15 is not even in the standards.
Well, again, this is what we would want in our world. I think it would be a great world. My life would be so much easier. But that's my own personal commentary. Does anyone want to? I make a motion to talk about whether we want to give our support to this checklist.
So in other words, Elizabeth, you're saying we should decide tonight whether it's a yay or nay.
Well, they're asking me. It doesn't mean we have to because time is very, very short. But if we don't decide tonight at the last meeting, I think at the last 2 meetings, we asked people to provide feedback and give it to Bryant, and nobody has. So I'm afraid to kick it even longer. So
Okay, so the idea is that Is that
No,
we've up
the other draft was sent to us. Was it sent with
Well-
the minutes or just now?
It
As
was,
of
yeah,
today,
Well,
as
hold-
of today.
hold on.
Okay, so we need a chance to
No.
review it.
Yes, I was gonna add that it was sent to me today, so in fairness for the commission, yes, next meeting should be the final review period, for this iteration of the checklist.
Okay, and I don't know that they have time to wait another month, so I make I don't know if I have to make motions for all this, but I propose that we give shorter than a month to get back to Brian on it, maybe a week to get back to Brian on this.
How about we say,
Doris has a question.
This is a point of privilege, please.
Okay,
And the point of privilege is this, that the communications that I've gotten in the last day or so about this meeting said there is another version to come. And as a blind person sitting here, I prepared for the meeting.
right.
And I actually expected to see it. But, I read it beforehand and keep the stuff in my mind. There's a lot of detail there and in the last version that I saw, and you've enunciated some of it. But, I really would suggest that whatever the final version is, we should be able to look at and then decide whether we want to vote for it. That's the first thing. And then the second thing I will say is that the site plan review process does not get into the interior units accepting things like bricks and mortar, the width of clear space and doors, turn space, the stuff that's in the safe harbors for the Fair Housing Act, and what's in our building code, and that's what the code enforcement is supposed to use at any rate. It doesn't get into some of the amenity furnishings nor lighting. It's unfortunate, as far as I'm concerned, that lighting isn't included in the accessibility codes, but given recent developments, but nonetheless, the major amount of time that's given in the site plan process, the site plan review meetings is enough time to say, are you including, will this meet the thus and such, in standard in the building code? Are you assuring us of that? And then it also asked about what we understood was the standard site plan requirement for automatic doors, which does go beyond ADA or fair housing and the AMC. So, but some of the stuff in there is kind of like an individual choice kind of thing. I am not aware, even in the assessment or the negotiations that go on between staff, not the zoning, commission, the planning commission or the site plan review, that, over any number of months, there are some details that are negotiated by staff. But I've never seen any kind of full discussion of as much detail as in that checklist.
So if I understand you correctly, at first you were reiterating that there's no legal requirement or current process that requires any of this. And then you're saying that of the current checklist, you think that some of it should be not included because it's up to the personal choice.
Yeah, well, my point is that I thought that there was another rendition coming, and
Oh, yes,
I
that's
checked
true.
all of my stuff for the meeting, and it very
Yes. I
affirmatively
agree.
said there's another rendition.
And I absolutely agree. I don't think I did not realize that we had just gotten it, and I don't think it's fair. I think everybody has a right to review it beforehand. And so, but what I was saying before was, we might not necessarily have to provide a full month. So I don't know what people think about maybe providing, a week or something to review the new version. Brian, you have a thought?
Motion to open the review period until 11:59 PM, Wednesday, September 27th.
Would that work for you, Doris? Would you maybe have time to review the newer version?
Not at the end of a federal cycle and a federal quarter with the reporting I have to do. So.
Okay, so
I mean-
what time frame would work for you?
Well, I'm just. You asked me whether I could do it. I just don't know. I can't dictate that right now. Because I know what I have to do between now and October 15th. So.
Okay, so judging from this, did we even want to have a discussion of whether we can endorse this? I'm getting heavy vibes that, I shouldn't say. So, I guess,
I mean, we could say we endorse it as a potential reference tool.
right,
It's
well,
not for enforcement.
right, well, there is an introduction that has been revised and revised and revised, which you have a right to review. And one of the things that you might want to get back to us about is whether that introduction addresses some of the issues that you're
For
concerned about.
application, okay.
Yeah. So, you're not gonna be able till October 15th. So I would respectfully request that, could you prioritize it? It doesn't take that long to review it.
How different is it from the original version?
Would say probably 30% different.
Well, I don't really know what their time frame is, so, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 2-page read. It's not like a complicated, dense, technical report. I would say it's a bedtime read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Half, or not half, but a chunk is linked.
Yeah, a chunk is links, introductions. Let me print it just to get the actual page count.
But the one thing to keep in mind is that even the accessibility standards under the law are not necessarily enforced. The Community Development, Housing Planning Commission, they don't have the authority to do that.
Okay, that's a separate question.
It is the code enforcement that is supposed to have the authority to do it.
That's a completely separate issue. This question is, do we like this checklist?
No, I got it, but checklist implies you're gonna check it off, and if they haven't done it, then.
Well,
Alright.
so this tool is not for planning staff. This is for the planning commission to negotiate. It's like community benefits. Community benefits aren't, in the building code. We work with developers to add community benefits to projects to benefit for the community. So think is this like community benefits? We can ask them and, fingers crossed that the developers and county staff can negotiate that within community benefits, but this is not, we're not adopting this into the building code
Right.
or the county code. This is just a tool for the planning commission so they can say, did we ask for these things in our conversations with developers? Long-term goal, I'm hoping we could get some of this stuff written into the state regulations. Of course, we all know how Richmond can be when it comes to housing rights. But this tool is more of an advisor. It serves an advisory purpose. It's not it's not like a legal tool.
So you have a motion on the floor, which is a motion that we have to give a week to look at it, to talk to Bryant.
Could you repeat the motion?
Yeah.
Only because I am, right, the system was working perfectly earlier, but it's getting,
Oh, no.
the signal is, I can hear what people are saying, but it's fuzzy.
Yeah, no, I will happily repeat my motion. I motion to open the comment period on the multi-unit residential universal design checklist for use by the Site Plan Review Committee of the Arlington Planning Commission. Review period extended until September 27th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So midnight of next Wednesday.
And I would, if we're open for questions now, I would ask, what are we doing at that time? Would we say that unless Bryant has heard otherwise, that we will go ahead and endorse it?
Yeah, so if I don't receive any comments, additions, subtractions of the draft checklist, then when I wake up at 9 a.m.
You're not gonna send it out.
Okay, so if we're passing are you passing a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, if we're passing the motion, I feel that I want to offer an amendment that I feel is a friendly amendment, at least from my standpoint.
Okay.
Okay, and that is that the motion would be that we provide a statement or whatever you want to call it to we're providing it to the Aging Commission?
So the Aging Commission and the Disability Commission are working together to approve this document, and then we hand it over to
But who's it being submitted to?
the Site Plan Review Committees of the Arlington Planning Commission.
It isn't a site plan review committee, it's the planning commission. And
Yeah, so we're
they
presenting the
hold
document.
numerous site plan reviews.
Yeah, so we're giving it to the Arlington Planning Commission and the use
So
of.
it's to the planning commission.
Yeah.
Then I would suggest that I could support something like, that the Disability Commission received and reviewed the checklist of whatever it's called, universal design features or whatever.
Yeah.
Offered by the Commission on Aging and worked with them to finalize it, and that we support the checklist as a good reference tool to be used during site plan review, as it gives a good sense of the accessibility needs and concerns of both the disability and aging communities.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone second the motion?
Second, well, I can't
Done.
second, I can't second my own motion, so.
Oh.
I second.
All right, okay. We don't have any time to discuss the public comment, but we all know that we would need our thoughts by the 30th. Would anybody be interested in staying to discuss our support? Or can we just take a quick hand raise of people who are or are not inclined to work with this fellow that, Mr. Levine, that we just spoke with on the issue of Route 50 and the parking? Is anybody here inclined to take any action on it? I am. Okay, so we ran out of time for this meeting and.
I'm sorry, can you put the hands again? I needed.
Am I able to vote?
I mean, you can show your support, but.
I can
that's-
show my support, but I don't think I can vote.
Next week you can, during the recess meeting, they will, that's when they do approvals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have, I mean, I might as well ask, do we have, thoughts that we might support it in the current iteration that we don't even know?
So I'm happy to write a letter.
Wow, I love you, Brian.
And email that as well. I can work as slow as I can rattle that off this week. I will include screenshots of the report, which I sent to Courtney. So Courtney, can you forward that, the report to the rest of the commission? Option D, to provide a verbal explanation. It would essentially take that parking space in front of the synagogue and convert it into a service road with a median barrier with a walking path and still leave that parking space area. So
That sounds great.
yeah, addresses the safety, the vehicle safety concern, pedestrian safety concerns, and the building security concern.
So as I understand it, if you were so kindly to write this, we wouldn't necessarily be, referring to anything they're doing, but we would just be saying, there's a comment period, this is our comment.
Yeah, we say after review of the 2020 staff report provided by VDOT, we are in favor of option D as the happy medium.
And you could offer it to him as like, you can reference this letter in your letter.
Yeah.
Right.
So he wouldn't necessarily.
I have to kill it.
You know the fellow that came in the beginning of the meeting, and he was talking about parking spots in front of his synagogue?
Oh, the synagogue.
And so
I
Brian,
got the screenshots now.
and so Brian is
I thought it was a
proposing,
document that was going to be.
So the VDOT staff report will be emailed to everyone, just so they're aware of what option D looks like. And I did put in the email to Courtney, option D, and then the page number to identify that, along with, it's a 97-page report. So if you are a traffic data nerd, go at it, but.
okay, well, I make a motion that, that Brian, write out something about how we would support option D, then send it, or do we just want to vote now that, with review by.
I just have a quick question. Did he address option D? Did he say whether it was acceptable to him? Because I heard you bring it up, but I'm not quite sure what his response was.
I don't think he was aware
Yeah.
of option D.
Yeah, their stance was just that VDOT would not do anything to those parking spaces. They hadn't looked at the actual.
I don't think so.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to be sure that I hadn't missed a serious objection that he had made,
Oh, no,
Right,
no, no.
right.
that I would consider it, but
Just come back with
if he didn't give one,
information for us before we were gonna take a vote on this.
Well, the
Um,
the VDOT comment period ends next week, so.
Right.
Excuse me?
The VDOT comment period for this project ends the 28th.
Yeah, but it's on comments on a document, so if we haven't seen the document.
Yeah, I can send a copy of the document and, you know, let me.
Is this the one that came out in 2020?
Or just motion D, you know?
Yeah.
Because Doris, since we are under a time pressure, Bryant has offered to write up something so that we're not beholden to what Mr. Levine writes.
Mhm.
We are just talking for ourselves what we might like. The problem is that it's still the 30th and we have to review the whole document and you just said you wouldn't have time. So I don't know what to do with that. And our time is short. So my motion is, if Bryant is willing to write something up, we trust Bryant. He will, let's see. I don't know how to make a motion on this. Can someone else make a motion on this?
Well, what I was, because you had asked for, I think rightly so,
Right.
that they go along in whatever they say to ensure that whether or not their parking in front of the synagogue is taken, that they provide evidence that they're working on ensuring that there is accessible parking and an accessible path of travel, into the synagogue.
And I absolutely stick by that.
And so concept, I mean,
So I don't think it affects
I guess we
comments on
can say
this,
we
however.
support this, is the only people we can write to is the county board. We
Right,
cannot write to VDOT, right?
right.
So
We can
if
submit
the
a public comment.
if the proposal is commenting on VDOT, then all we can do is ask the county board to
Agree. Yeah.
Agreed.
say what we believe, right?
So I trust Brian to write that. He understands the process. As far as the other issue, I don't think it's something that we comment to VDOT on. We just, as a commission, say what we want them to do and hold their feet to the fire. But it doesn't have to be relevant to what Bryant writes in the next week.
Well, we're saying something to the county board, was the point.
Yeah.
Right? And if we're saying to the county board, we support the synagogue's position.
But we're not saying that.
Yeah.
We're saying we
No.
support option.
We're saying what then?
We're saying we support option D of the staff report.
What is option B of the staff?
So option D of the VDOT report takes that parking space that Mr. Levine was talking about and adding,
I didn't see this.
it's going, like I said earlier, it's going to be emailed. Courtney is going to email it out.
Why would we tell the county board what we support if we haven't seen it? I mean,
You know,
I
I'm
don't
okay
think
with us
that's-
not making any comments.
All right, I guess we're not gonna comment.
Well, I mean, if you want to do it, I'll just
Mhm.
vote either an abstention or no, and that's fine. I'm just expressing what my opinion
Right,
is. And
I
my
know.
opinion is that I don't think we should put ourselves on the line with the county board saying we support option B, when I don't even know what option B is.
Mhm.
All right, well, he didn't come to us fast enough, so that could be our response. You know, I mean, on the one hand, it's too bad. On the other hand, he didn't give us enough time to fully endorse it. So,
And I don't think he even read the site report himself, right?
right,
Yeah.
Is proposal B what they want?
No,
He didn't even know that.
he didn't even know that proposal D.
Given with that, I don't think we have enough
He was
information
asking us
as a
to support-
commission.
Don't
Yeah.
get rid of the parking, right?
Yes.
So I think at this point, we didn't have enough time as a commission to formally comment. I guess we could each comment as individuals.
Yeah.
I think it's a good point. I'm always for preserving parking. So I might well do that. But for purposes of our commission, is it okay if we decide that we are not going?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, I'm okay with that, and I will tell Mr. Levine that it's not that we agree or disagree, it's that we didn't have enough time to process it. Is that okay with you, Alexa?
I mean, it sounds like where we're going with this. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, if there's some way that we can express solidarity with their concerns while noting that we don't have enough time to make a decision. But I'm not sure what that would be, so.
Yeah.
But you know what? They don't even have, because he admitted it, they don't even really have any accessible parking because the
Yeah.
parking's not marked.
Right, they are
And so
completely-
anybody can park there.
Yes, they are completely raising this issue as a disability issue when really they haven't taken steps to make it disability parking. And all we would have done is say, gee, work with us because, we think you should be taking proactive steps. So what you said, Doris, it's completely correct. They have not been proactive at all as a congregation to create an accessible path. It's true. Do you guys agree?
Yeah. If you're gonna propose something to us, then at least show some measures that you've been proactive. If you haven't been proactive at all, then don't.
But let's not get into that. I
Yeah.
think we should say
Sure.
that we appreciate the comments, but given the timeline needed for us to submit comments, we don't have an appropriate amount of time to consider all the factors as part of our duties as commissioners on behalf of the county.
But then also to review whether,
But I
I
think
mentioned after he testified, which is to find out whether this is street improvements that are being made to make it accessible
True,
path to
true.
public transportation. And if that's what they're doing, then
for time's sake,
I would want to question how I structure supporting people.
Doris, that is an excellent point. We don't even know why VDOT is doing it. So I will convey this to Mr. Levine. I'm happy to do so. And so, meeting adjourned.
well, we need to do our schedule for maps.
Oh, gosh, not meeting adjourned.
Yeah.
Meeting open again.
So Courtney, when's Matt's available dates again?
He said Thursdays are better, so I think the last meeting, the proposal was to switch the October 17th date to the 24th on another Tuesday. However, Tuesdays are blocked off. So he was saying the 19th, October 19th or October 26th, or any of the Thursdays.
So what is being asked, Doris, is would you be willing to meet on October 26th? Did you say?
I thought it was 24.
On October 20, what is the date?
On a Thursday in October.
Right, so Matt's is not available on Tuesdays in October. So the proposal is instead of meeting, because DAC had agreed to meet October 24th, to meet on October 26th, which is a Thursday. That's the fourth Thursday in October.
So everyone look at their calendars and see. Okay, do you have a way of knowing whether that date will work for you, Doris?
Well, for me, it depends on.
That works.
The 26th works for me.
26 works for me.
Adopt the 26th.
I believe it works for me.
I can't do the 26th,
Oh,
but I can do the 19th.
There's also site plan reviews coming through that week. That much I know, but I can't remember what is when. It's
But also you guys
I
can do it
don't, but
without
I don't
the
care.
26th.
Thursday is fine so long as
That's
it's not
okay.
the same Thursday as the housing commission meetings, which will be probably the first or second Thursday.
If the 26th works for everybody, that's totally.
well, it looks like not, the 19th is not the first or second, so it wouldn't, so it works for me. And from what you're saying, Doris, it would work for you. If the housing commission meets the first or second week in October, the 19th is the third week in October.
Yeah, I think, if I recall correctly, they usually in October will meet at the first or second. So in January, then they go to, January, February, they go to the third week, so. Yeah.
And would the 19th meet for you? All right, the 19th would work for all of us.
Do we need to do a motion to authorize that notice?
No.
Okay.
So I'll follow up with him and confirm.
Well, thank you everyone for staying late and for really just having some excellent points, including yours at the very end, Doris, saying let's not rush on this.
All right, I'm going to head home and hopefully this pit bull does not jump on me.
What doesn't jump on you?
I just adopted a pit bull and he's
Oh,
he's going
Congratulations.
through service dog training,
Nice.
but he's 1 year old, so I'm like,
Oh my